I'm Barbara, and my son Greg had been teaching in Thailand for over 7 years when my story begins. A phone call from his friend informed me that my son had been arrested and was in jail in Thailand. From that time on, my nightmare worsened. 2 days later, I arrived in Bangkok and was met by a man saying he was Greg's attorney. I spent 5.5 months staying in Bangkok, visiting my son, and trying to bring him home. It turns out that the attorney wasn't an attorney at all. And he hadn't been hired by Greg. I visited Greg daily, and I won't describe what a Thai jail is like because you wouldn't believe me. I cried many times a day and every day, and I prayed many times a day, every day. After having been in Thailand until Christmas time, everyone advised me to go home. I wasn't sleeping, and I had lost so much weight, I was 111 pounds. From home, 2.5 years later, I get another traumatizing phone call that my son had committed suicide. He was a week shy of his 52nd birthday and had spent just over 3 years in Thai jails and prisons. I was devastated and furious with my life and with God. Greg's ashes were sent to me, and Father Bart did a caring, compassionate funeral mass for him. But after about 8 months after Greg's death, my daughter Jenny told me that she had T-cell cancer, T-cell lymphoma. We held each other and cried. I was in shock, and days later I realized I was even in denial. This was a dark, scary time for me, and I decided that having lost my only son, surely God would answer my desperate prayers and heal my daughter. I can't think of a time when I didn't believe in God. I'd loved Him for as long as I can remember. As a grade school child, I would walk back to church on Sunday afternoons for stations and benediction and holy hour. St. Jerome Church and school, as well as a public library, were my happy places. My home life wasn't supportive and loving, but the nuns at school were. The Blessed Virgin Mary Sisters, with classrooms of over 50 students at the time, must have seen a need in me and filled it. Everyone thought I'd be a nun, but they underestimated my love for babies. My parents wanted me to marry a Notre Dame man, so they sent me to St. Mary's of Notre Dame, and I married a Notre Dame man. Although that pleased my mother, it was flawed from the start, unbeknownst to me. And after 22 years of marriage, he divorced me. All my children refused confirmation and left the church years before. My daughter's cancer took her life. She was a staunch non-believer, as was her husband and her 3 children, who planned the funeral. Her ashes were buried in a beautiful wooded park. Not a trace of Catholic faith was anywhere. As a personal, supportive effort, Father Bart came to Jenny's celebration of life. I was struggling beyond belief at this time, raging at God, and Father Bart heard me out patiently and lovingly. He told me that it was okay to rage at God, that God understood. That was a great relief to me because I was even feeling guilty for being so angry with the God that I'd loved all my life. Don't you cry, Jenny. My prayers were intense then, and my heart softened once more. Father Bart was a great influence in his gentle, caring way. He was indeed God's agent of love. Just what I needed. I'm back and stronger than ever. It's a miracle how much grace has strengthened my love of God. During this pandemic and time alone, I've had times of self-pity moving into my thoughts. My prayers are positive, however, although I still don't understand why things happen the way they do. I trust in God and I believe that He continues to love me and guide me.